Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Dad. How are you doing this morning?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for
Good.
having me
You look
on.
fit and well, and physically distanced and social distancing and all of that stuff. So, I think we're all trying to do our part to comply with all the rules and regulations of trying to keep everybody healthy. Obviously, that's what longevity is all about. That's what you've been about your entire career, your entire life. So, what we want to talk about this morning is just that: is really going back to the beginning and really the basics. And so first, let me just wish everybody, best wishes, and I hope everybody's doing well in this trying time. A lot going on, obviously, and the rules of the daily engagement seem to change every single day. The latest suggestions of our international, I guess, health authorities is to be wearing masks if you're going outside, just to try to prevent that spray of droplets and passing the spread of the coronavirus. Obviously, we have a lot of other ways to help as well, including physical distancing. There you go, including physical distancing, hand sanitizing, going out as little as possible just to avoid contact. One of the things that Michelle and I have been talking about in the last days and couple of weeks really is just making sure that you also take the time to sanitize things like your cell phone. If you touch a fuel pump, if you put gas in your car, make sure you're wiping your hands down afterwards. If you get in your car, make sure you're wiping the seat down, making sure you're wiping down the hard surfaces and things with sanitizer as well. It's not just your hands. And then avoid contact with your face from your hands, obviously, as well. And so just minimizing contact in public spaces is a big factor, but also, and we've talked about this a lot, is supporting your immune system is a first line of defense as well. So obviously longevity has solutions for that. So what I want to do is jump right into it. So going back to where this all started, what led to you realizing that we as biological beings need 90 essential nutrients? Why 90? Why not 15? Why not 115? Obviously there's a lot of beneficial nutrients, but why 90 essential nutrients? Where does that come from? So I know that only represents like 50 years of research in one question, but let's jump right into it. How did that come to be?
Okay, well, it actually all started when I was 4 years old, and I had what would today be called autism. It was one of those things where we lived on a farm, and my mom and dad took me to St. Louis to 20 different doctors, pediatricians and eye doctors and all kinds of immunity doctors and things like that for 5 years. By the time I was 9 years old, I'd seen 20 doctors. The 20th, her name was Mary Jane Skeffington, I'll never forget, a pediatrician, eye doctor. And again, Tourette syndrome as part of the autism spectrum. I had what would be called today the autism, okay? But they didn't have a name for it back then. And so they're all just saying, oh, we don't know, take tranquilizers, take this, take that. And so it was very disruptive. And finally she said, well, he needs to be institutionalized. I says, what does it mean, Mom? She says, well, we're gonna put you in a hospital. Remember, I'm 9 years old at this point. And she says, okay. So, well, how long am I gonna have to be in the hospital? She says, maybe for the rest of your life. Well, to a 9 years old, that didn't sound too good. Okay, was I gonna have a short life or was I gonna have a long life in a hospital? So I that day began to kind of think about it. The next day, when after doing my chores on the farm and the bus picked us up and went to school, everybody else did their usual thing, and they'd go to lunch, and I went to the library. I couldn't read, I couldn't remember anything, and so I went to the library and said, look, I can't read, I can't remember anything. Do you have any just little pamphlets that you give like new nurse students or new doctor students or something like that, with just a lot of pictures and one word under the picture? She gave me a couple of pamphlets, and I went into the back of the book and looked into the, A, B, C, D, where it's going to send you to look for things. And I got through A's, nothing, B's, nothing. I got to C's and said cramps. Well, I'm having these little facial tics and cramps in my face. Well, maybe that's what I got. And it said you need calcium and magnesium to stop the cramps. Well, every morning when I'd feed the calves, there's a little analysis tag on the 50-pound bags of alfalfa pellets with all the vitamins and minerals in it. And it had calcium and magnesium. So I ran home after the school bus left us off and started eating handfuls of these alfalfa pellets, filled my pockets with them. The next morning, I threw the Cheerios out onto the lawn for the chickens, filled my cereal bowl with the alfalfa pellets, put milk on it, freaked my mom out. She took it away and said, that's animal food, you can't eat it. My dad took it away from her and gave it back to me. He said, he's gonna be in the hospital for the rest of his life, let him eat what he wants. And so within 3 days, I was cured. In 3 days, I was absolutely cured from what we would call Tourette syndrome and autism in just 3 days. I mean, it freaked my family out, but I didn't tell anybody at school. She didn't tell anybody at school. But in church, everybody is pointing after a couple of weeks and whispering and pointing to me, because instead of banging my feet on the floor and slamming the prayer books during everybody singing, I'm singing along with everybody in tune and everything else. What's going on here? And so it was noticed by all. Well, to make a long story short, graduated from high school in 1964, no, 58, from university at 64, not me, but 1964. And I wasn't 64 when I graduated, I wasn't a slow learner at that point. But in 1964, I had my sort of a semi-degree from the military, spent 4 years in military school, 7 years in the Army. And so I had that, heavy weapons and targeting and that kind of stuff, military history. Then I had my degree in agriculture. My major was in animal husbandry and nutrition. And I noticed that there were no health insurance programs for animals, for farmers. There was life insurance for expensive racehorses, but not health insurance. And so the health insurance for farmers, before they had the alfalfa pellets, all the vitamins and minerals in it, was wood ashes. And they would put shovelfuls of wood ashes into the pen with the animals. The animals would eat the wood ashes, which were really minerals. And then when these pellets and things came out, I noticed that the animals just never got sick. And, you know, they were doing very well. So I said, why don't we do the same thing? And so I began to look at that. So again, in 1964, I graduated. I also had my degree in agriculture. I had my degree in veterinary medicine. I was halfway through a pathology degree. And in 1961, 3 years before graduation, I ran into the first mass die-off from pollution during my pathology studies, got it published. It was my first publication. I was 21 years old. And the teachers and professors, they said, well, you did it all. We were on vacation. Well, that's yours. I said, well, you mean I don't have to be a sub-author or anything? No, this is yours. So I got it published in scientific journals and sent copies to governors and senators and state officials and scout leaders and Marlon Perkins, the old Mutual Omaha Wild Kingdom show, because I had worked for him as a kid. And to make a long story short, 6 months later, after 1964 graduation, Perkins says, I need you to go to Africa and work on the White Rhino Conservation Project for me. So, okay, he said, I'll get you back into graduate school, whatever you want to do when you come back. But this is for the White Rhino Conservation Project. It might be 2 years, might be 5 years. Whenever it's done, we'll bring you back. So to make a long story short, I was there for 2 years. And I'm prepared to stay in Africa forever. Lived in the bush with all these native villages. I was the only white guy with millions and millions of Zulus, literally Zulus, in South Africa and Southwest Africa and Southeast Africa. And I was learning about them using herbs and things to prevent diseases. They didn't have kids with autism and Tourette syndrome and things like that. They were just all perfectly healthy, running around naked out in the bush and so forth. And so I get a letter from Perkins saying, look, I used your paper on the mass die-off from pollution to get a $25 million grant from the National Institutes of Health, and I want you to be the pathologist on the project. You'll be at Washington University in St. Louis. Your job will be to find animals in zoos that die of the same pollutants that humans die from. And we're going to use the zoo animals in the big cities as the canary in the mine. The old coal miners for 300-400 years have been taking canaries down in the mine when the poison gases were leaking in the mine. They knew to flee. When the canaries would drop off the perch and die. And he said, when the animals start dying in the zoos, we know to evacuate the cities. That's your job. Okay, and he said, here's a list of things I want you to do for me. And the first thing was on the list, every bear in zoos around the world were dying of liver cancer. Every zoo in the world, all their bears were dying of liver cancer. And so when I came back, I hadn't even taken my jacket off. And he says, here's my list of what I want you to do. Find out why all these bears are dying of cancer. The geneticists say they're genetics. And well, I said, it's just one species of bears. He said, no, every species of bear, and they're all dying of liver cancer. So I already know what the problem is. I said, take me to where you're storing the food for the bears. So I remember I hadn't even taken my jacket off yet, and I still got my suitcases in my hand. He picked me up at the airport, Merlin Perkins. We go to the St. Louis Zoo, where they have all these beautiful bear exhibits, all these gunite caves and everything for the bears, like 6 species of bears. He said, we don't want all our bears dying of liver cancer like everybody else's. So we go into the barn where they're storing the food for bears, and it was all outdated bread, which had come from the thrift stores, and they paid 10 cents a loaf for it. And, you know, for a 1,000-pound bear, they could get 5 loaves of bread. That's 50 cents and a couple of eggs and half a chicken. They were doing good. And so he said, well, turn out the lights. And we had a black light, a little UV light. And I put the UV light on, and the old bread from the thrift stores fluoresced green, like the same color as traffic green lights. He said, what's that? And I said, well, there's a toxin called aflatoxin, which causes liver cancer. It's found in aspergillus, which is a bread mold. And all this old bread is covered with this bread mold, and it's making this toxin, aflatoxin. That's why all the bears are dying from this. If you switch them to dog food, it will eliminate. Remember, I'm only 24 years old here. Okay. I said, this will eliminate all the liver cancers in all the bears, which it did. And so they were all freaked out that, you know, I'm 24 years old, walked in, and all the experts in the world are saying it's genetics and blah, 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 blah. And I figured it out in 30 seconds because I already knew about that being a pathologist. And so, make a long story short, over a period of 10 years, I did 20,000 autopsies, 17,000 some change of over 454 species of animals, and 3,000 humans, 20 million chemistries, you know, looking for the pollution stuff. But what I found out was there were no genetically transmitted diseases. There were no genetically transmitted birth defects. We had a very low rate of birth defects in the zoos where they fed dog food and cat food and supplemented chicken food and stuff like that to the animals in the zoos. Very few birth defects. All the babies are born normal. Well, people in the cities are having all these babies born with birth defects. That's because the baby formulas only had 3 minerals in them. You need 60. And the baby formulas, which were formulated in the 1940s during the Second World War when all the mothers were working in the factories, couldn't breastfeed their babies. Good idea, but they only put 3 minerals in there. And so I'm putting 2 and 2 together at this point. Make a long story short, my thesis, it was over 500 pages. Oh, I take that back, it was over 5,000 pages. And it got published as a textbook because nobody had ever done autopsies in that many species in one project, 554 species and so forth, plus humans. And it's in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure because I did find that there were no genetically transmitted diseases, no genetically transmitted birth defects. And they created a new science called epigenetics, and another fellow by the name of Bruce Lipton, like Lipton Tea, who looks at identical twins over a period of years, and they go different places and they're different at the end of 30 years, even though they're identical twins, because they're different locations and foods. I was able to show these things very quickly in just 6 weeks, and getting 100 baby ducks from a mother-father, kept stealing their eggs, it kept laying eggs. We put them all in the incubator at the same time, killed them all at the same time at 6 weeks of age, and gave them different foods in the different groups, and found that, again, epigenetics was in play here. And that was also published in many languages. And it's in this book called Diseases of Exotic Animals, covers all of the animal research. There is a book called Epigenetics, which represents 8,000 human autopsies, which represents my work on the epigenetics story, replacing genetics. And so it comes down to, we can eliminate every birth defect. If everybody were to get every nutrient, the 90 essential nutrients, and that's very important. Our motto for longevity is 90 for life. And for life, to me, life starts 6 months before conception, okay? Because your mom is making eggs, dad's making sperm, and they're getting nourished and so forth. And to start taking nutrients after you're born is not very clever. You want to take it for 6 months before you're conceived, and then all through the pregnancy, and from the moment you're born until 10 years after you die, kind of thing. You want the 90 essential nutrients. And the 90 essential nutrients will prevent, and in many cases reverse, as many as 900 different diseases. There's 900 different diseases that are preventable with nutrition, okay? And again, they're in the books, Disease of Exotic Animals and Epigenetics. Very, very proud of that. And of course, we had to come up with products. In the beginning, we were just taking things off the shelf and mixing and matching and putting together what we could. And I wasn't a physician yet. I was just a veterinarian. I shouldn't say that. I was a veterinarian, not just a veterinarian. I was a veterinarian and already published. And so we started coming up with Dr. Wallach's pig arthritis formula to give the body what it needed to rebuild cartilage and ligaments and tendons, connective tissue and bones. And then we had the healthy bone and joint pack, the healthy bone and joint pack for arthritis and osteoporosis, which is very important, especially now with the coronavirus, because your bone marrow is the biggest part of your immune system. It makes red blood cells, makes white blood cells, lymphocytes, neutrophils, which are the cavalry, which are the Marines of your immune system. When your body says, hey, you have an infectious coronavirus in your nasal passages, in your back of your throat and in your lungs, your intestines, you're in trouble, sends out the alarm. Your bone marrow releases into your bloodstream all these white blood cells, which go up through the blood to your nose and your nasal passages and your lungs and your intestines and every place these viruses are, and kill them and eat them. And then also you have stem cells in your bone marrow that make antibodies, which are kind of like chemical warfare against these viruses. And the reason why, and this is what makes me different, I look at the natural history of a disease, okay? And this is why I was able to find the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy. Gave the information to Jerry Lewis. He was so excited, he took it to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. They fired him and stopped the telethon. And of course, I found the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis and pointed out that cystic fibrosis was not a genetic disease either. It was a nutritional deficiency caused by the mother being deficient or being put on one of these baby formulas that didn't have the nutrient in it. To make a long story short, April 16th, 2013, in a federal court judgment, they ruled in our favor, and they put that nutrient, which we'll get to in a minute, that nutrient into the baby formulas. And within 3 months' time after that happened, forcing these manufacturers to put this nutrient into baby formulas, big newspaper article, the Charlotte Observer, the big newspaper in North Carolina, just like New York Times for New York. And it said, we don't know why, but Sudden-Death syndrome has vanished in the state of North Carolina. 3 months later, newspapers came out in Missouri and said, we don't know why, but the Sudden-Death syndrome has vanished in the state of Missouri. And then 3 months later, all the states are coming out and say, we don't know why, but the rate of Sudden-Death syndrome has dropped significantly by 85 to 95% in our state. That's because we put that one nutrient into the baby formulas. Only 2% of the babies that had died of Sudden-Death syndrome were in bed with their mothers when they died. 98% were not. None of them suffocated. You could tell that from the autopsies and looking at the tissues. They all died from a nutritional deficiency. Through Milan, I was able to go to China and did 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 that died of that deficiency. It's called Kishan disease after the province because there's very little of that nutrient in the soil there. They would all die from, when they were older, 6, 8, 10 years old, they would die from what we would call a heart attack, the same thing that the athletes die from. And it's one of those things where 200 of the 1,700 would be diagnosed as Sudden-Death syndrome here in the States. And so got it written up, got it published, sent it out to all the pediatric hospitals and pediatricians and everything, and OBGYNs, and nobody did anything about it except ourselves. And so we're so very proud of Youngevity that we now have baby formulas, which we had. One was, we still have it, okay. The baby formula is called Kids Toddy. And you had and before we came out with this court ruling, we would tell people to put the appropriate dose based on the baby's weight, the Kids Toddy, into the baby formulas, and that would give them all the nutrients they needed to prevent this heart attack and crib death and all that kind of stuff. And so we still use that today for kids who are, too young to take the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack, too many hard pills and things like that for a 1 month-old baby. Use the Kids Toddy and the EFAs into their baby formulas, and they get their 90 essential nutrients. And so all of these things have been ending because of the efforts of Steve and Michelle and Milan and literally Johnny Taylor and all of our wonderful distributors who've been with us, many of them for 30 years, have been with us for 30 years. They got the idea that to prevent and reverse these diseases, we need to be proactive because you can't have a vaccine for muscular dystrophy. You can't have a vaccine for cystic fibrosis. You can't have a vaccine for sudden death syndrome. You can't have a vaccine for Alzheimer's disease. And of course, I have great stories about people who are in comas for 8 years with, quote, Alzheimer's disease being fed through a G-tube. In 3 days, putting our program for Alzheimer's disease through their G-tube, they wake up and think they were only asleep for one night, went back to work and freaked everybody out because nobody there was there 11 years earlier when they stopped going to work because they had Alzheimer's disease. And so these are the
so let's kind of get back to the 90 essential nutrients. I know, like I said, I think I think we could talk about your career and what you've discovered for 50 years because it took you 50 years. But I can anybody that's been to the Longevity building and seen the wall of articles and memorabilia and things. There's an article with you and Marlon Perkins together, at the St. Louis Zoo, and the picture was taken at the St. Louis Zoo. But the article is about the the Institute of Natural Biological Systems, and that became a modern day research facility. But there were 3 of them, and that was the first of the 3. And you and Marlon Perkins and a team of people, this is where that research program that you're describing,
the $25 million study,
was also carried out, really originating there. And then, so there's a picture and an article on the wall at Longevity of that. There's a newspaper article of you at the St. Louis Zoo examining an animal skull, and as part of that research. And I, of course, lived throughout your career and obviously followed you around in all these zoos and stuff. I mean, you did all the work and lived it, but I was there, so I saw it and lived through it. But tons of that sort of stuff. So in fact, there's a blog post of mine that is just out for April. So it's my April blog on longevity.com, the resource center. So it's longevityrc.com or on longevity.com. If you go to the resource center and go to blogs, and in that blog, I describe a lot about the 90 essential nutrients and really your early career of being in Africa and being called back by Marlon Perkins and all of those things. And something that I also remind people about, especially people my age and older, is back in the 60s and 70s. And if you grew up in the 70s and the 80s, you probably remember Marlon Perkins if you've grown up in the US, Canada, and North America for sure. But also pollution was like a major factor of the time. And today it's energy, it's green energy, it's still pollution. Yeah, all of those things still are hot topics. But back then, this is really where that research grant came from, was the pollution problem. It was a major issue that had reached a tipping point. And so many of us my age and older remember the public service announcements with the Indian walking down the beach and trash either being washed up at his feet, or there's a car that drives by and somebody throws out a fast food bag of trash onto the street. And you remember the tear running down that Indian's cheek as part of that public service announcement. It really changed really the direction of that whole project that whole topic, I guess, of pollution and conservation. But you were already doing it. I mean, you grew up as an Eagle, became an Eagle Scout, and so you had an interest in this, from early childhood. So that definitely changed the trajectory of pollution and conservation around the world, really.
Well, I think we're doing that, Steve. Thank you for keeping me back on track here, because last year I was the featured speaker at the Tesla Foundation, the Tesla Tech Society. Now, this is not the cars. This is the PhDs and the professors and the researchers and stuff like that. And I was the featured speaker. And basically because, again, I had found that pollution is a problem, but it's not the cause of the concerns that everybody has. There's 2 different things going on in parallel. And of course, they forgot some things. And my thesis was published and made a DVD out of it. Those are available through Longevity and Wellness, okay? The DVD, and I was a cover article in a magazine, their magazine from last year. I'm going to be the featured speaker this year in August. We should be done with the coronavirus by then. And if not, we'll do it all by electronics like we're doing now. But I have, the top speaking slot. They already got my paper, and so that's going to be a cover article in July of this year, and it's a big hoo-ha. And that's because I figured out the other piece. There's always multiple pieces to a problem, and what I found out was there should be more concern about lack of stuff rather than too much stuff. Okay, the lack of stuff, 90 for life. This is our defense against pollution. This is our defense against pandemics. This is our defense against everyday stuff. Okay, and so again, I go back to our bone marrow, which makes white blood cells, which makes antibodies, makes red blood cells. White blood cells makes platelets, so you don't bleed to death from a simple little bump or something like that. And doctors never pay attention to your bone marrow. So what is the food of the bone marrow? Well, the food of the bone marrow is primarily minerals, and we're a mineral company. And so it was a hand in glove thing. It was very, very good. And so why suddenly are we having all these mineral deficiencies? Well, back when I was a kid, we didn't have electricity until I was 9 years old. We had wood stoves, and we put the wood ashes out in the garden as fertilizer. We couldn't afford commercial fertilizer, so we do what they did for thousands of years, put wood ashes in the garden. And wood ashes are not carbon, maybe 1 or 2% carbon, and the rest is minerals. It didn't burn when you burnt the wood of the tree. And we would also use it as a supplement. We would put it in our porridge for breakfast. We'd put it in soups and things like that. It was in everything. And when pregnant women would have cravings, they would eat wood ashes. When little kids would have pica, P-I-C-A, which is this craving, and they would eat dirt and things like that, if they would preferentially eat wood ashes. Okay, and that's why some people in the world live a long time, because there's a lot of minerals in the wood ashes, because there's a lot of minerals in the soil. Nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like gold and silver. They occur in veins like chocolate and chocolate ice cream. So this is why we have to supplement to guarantee you're going to get everything. When a doctor says, oh, just eat well, you're going to get everything you need, that would be like your mechanic telling you, don't put oil in your car, you're just wasting money. Just put dirt from Texas or Oklahoma in there, you're bound to get what the engine needs. Well, even an insane person would laugh their head off if they told you to just put dirt from Texas and Oklahoma in your car instead of oil. When a doctor says, oh, just eat well, you get everything you need, people say, oh, and you're going to run into this as a Longevity associate. Well, my doctor says I can eat well and get everything I need. Well, that doctor should be put in jail for reckless endangerment. You cannot get everything you need from eating well, because plants only need 3 elements from the soil to make good seeds for the next generation. We need 60 from the soil. So usually you're up to 57 short, and that's why we have so much problems with health. So where did all this fall apart? It actually fell apart with hydroelectricity. I'm only going to spend 1 or 2 minutes on this, but hydroelectricity is one of the biggest causes of our problems. Well, but what about all the carbon pollution? And I apologize, I thought I had the ringer off there. Okay, now I got the ringer off. I'm not a techie, sorry about that. And so at any rate, what happens is silt, which is the erosion, dust and dirt and minerals from where the snow melts and the ice melts and that sort of stuff, was the food for the algae in the sea. And then the little polyps that make the reefs would eat the algae that had eaten the minerals, coming down to the rivers and so forth. And that was the cycle. If you think about it, everywhere there's a reef, the reef is in a volcanic island chain, Japan, Hawaii, and Malaysia and stuff like that. Okay, there are no reefs out in the deep ocean. They're always where there's a volcanic source of minerals, which the algae needed a lot of. And of course, then the polyps ate the algae and made the reefs. And so what's happening? What's happening is right now, okay, there is over 1 million hydroelectric dams in the world. They've dammed up every great river and almost all the tributaries, okay, for hydroelectricity. There's 2 million dams for water conservation and irrigation. So there's 3 million dams damming up all of our water okay, not only dammed up the water to make hydroelectricity, but behind these dams, and in some areas, they actually collect the silt and bag it up and sell it to local farmers, which is a good thing because they're getting the minerals from behind those dams to use as fertilizer for their plants. And they can sell them as organic and get a high yield because they're getting all those minerals. But we've shut off the food supply to the ocean. We've shut off the food supply to the reefs by damming up all these rivers. And that's why I call them the dams, because, you know, they're providing carbon dioxide free electricity, but on the other hand, they're cutting off the food supply to the ocean, the food supply to the reefs. So kind of figured out how to deal with this and how to get this. Of course, we have a wonderful fertilizer, which is our basic plant minerals. And so we are, as soon as this comes out, we're going to go to the oil companies, we're going to go to the coal companies, we're going to take our Youngevity Bloom Minerals fertilizer in the liquids and the granules, and we're going to reawaken. We're going to start with the Great Barrier Reef, and Youngevity is going to be famous for bringing all the reefs back to life. So watch for that. We're very excited about that. We know how to do it, and they'll be able to keep the hydroelectric dams. Okay, that's good, but we'll be able to take all this silt that's backing up behind all these dams with augers and get them around and feed the ocean, feed the algae, feed the polyps, feed the reefs. And so Youngevity is going to be one of the biggest corporate heroes, corporate families in history, because just think about it. With everybody's push to do hydroelectricity, they have dammed up every river in the world and cut off the food supply to the ocean. Only human beings could do that. Well, it's going to be human beings associated with Youngevity that's going to save the earth, save the ocean, save all the reefs. And so I'm very, very proud of each and every one of you. And so we have to do the same thing for ourselves. Okay. Now, I'm much older than I look. And again, I've been taking the 90 essential nutrients this month at 71 years, I've been taking the 90 essential nutrients twice a day because I started eating the animal foods 71 years ago. Okay. And it's like crazy. I haven't been sick. I mean, I have injuries that I'm recovering from because I'm active and go to construction sites and get hurt and all that kind of stuff. But I don't have any diabetes. I don't have any arthritis. I don't have any high blood pressure. I don't have fibromyalgia. I don't have any osteoporosis. I got plenty of white blood cells to attack the bugs and so forth. And I go all over the world and lecture all over the world, and everybody's sick around me, but I never get sick. And of course, again, for 71 years this month, I've been taking the 90 essential nutrients twice a day. And I hope you do too. Of course, it tastes a lot better now than it did back then. And we have so many great products, but we have the basic program we call the Healthy Start Pack. And the Healthy Start Pack is the core of all of our programs. And I also want you to get a hold of the trilogy of books, Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, Passport to Aromatherapy, and the book Dead Doctors Don't Lie, and the CD and DVD Dead Doctors Don't Lie. The CDs in 9 languages, so you can't say I can't understand English. But the reason is, of course, the trilogy books, Let's Play Doctor, Let's Play Herbal Doctor, Passport to Aromatherapy, covers all the traditional medicine that all these third world cultures are using to protect themselves against these viruses, okay? And they've been using these herbs and aromatherapy oils for millennials, okay? We're talking thousands of years, not weeks or months or hundreds of years. We're talking thousands of years. So we have all that's why Youngevity has 5,000 products. But the basic core is a Healthy Start Pack, and then you can add the secret sauces to it. Here's kind of a way we look at things. Let's say you have a granny who's got high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis. She's got fibromyalgia. She's on dialysis 6 days a week because she hasn't peed in 10 years. They want to give her stents in her heart. She's got liver cirrhosis, and your doctors are telling them, you better come in because we need to get you going because she's got bad genes and she passed them on to you. No, she has a nutritional problem. And the reason why she has these 12 different diseases, they're all nutritional deficiency diseases and she couldn't absorb.
Well, I think that's an important thing to address at that point is, our products aren't treatment for diseases. They're prescription for basic nutrition. And so, we're supporting the body's need for nutrition. And, something that I think probably makes sense to most people is these biological systems. You were just talking about the health of reefs, right? And the need for nutrients, especially minerals, right? Yep. And so, I grew up, like I said, around animals, around you. love things that are tropical, like tropical birds and tropical fish. And, I've kept all sorts of tropical fish, including,
You had your own
really,
zoos in the house.
really, really difficult to keep saltwater aquariums and things. But it comes down to balanced nutrition. It comes down to all biological systems, including a human being, requires these these nutrients to support the biological system. And it doesn't matter if you're a reef, it doesn't matter if you're a forest, it doesn't matter if you're an agricultural field, or if you're a human being or a dog. Your biological system needs those basic nutrients, or things start falling apart, things start not being healthy, right? And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's correct. And this is why the 90 essential nutrients covers all of the known needs of all biological systems. Again, if you're a hummingbird, an elephant, or a human being, or an ostrich, or a dog, or a cat, or a cow, or a reef, it doesn't matter. All biological systems need the 90 essential nutrients. And the ones that are successful are the ones that have access to them, or can make them, or convert stuff, and so forth. And that's why you have different species living in different areas, because they have the equipment to utilize that source of nutrition, and so forth. And this is where human beings, of course, we have the ability to know that and make sure through supplementation. And I get disturbed when you see on TV, they say, buy this nutritional supplement. It's a complete nutrition, only has 27 nutrients in it. It says complete nutrition. Well, they don't even have 30% of the 90. They only 23 nutrients or 27 nutrients. So you really get it shorted there. And so this is something you had to be proactive about. If you want to add 25 to 50 or more years to your life based on healthy tissue, your body's able to maintain itself, you're giving your bone marrow what it needs. And of course, one of my favorite new products that you guys came along with, is just really beautiful, is the Immortalium, which is a special food for stem cells. Every cell type, there you go.
One of my favorite products.
Yep. Every cell type, every tissue type, every organ type, okay, has a stem cell, one or two or more stem cells to deal with that, to make sure that as they get old, or they get injured, or they're sick, the stem cells make new ones, replace them, or they all have a biological lifetime. When they reach the end of their lifespan and they die, your stem cells make new ones, but your stem cells require these nutrients. So we came up with Immortalium to give the stem cells of your body the nutrition they need to make the tissues they're designed to make. And
okay, I have one question for you before we wrap this up, because we're at about 40 minutes, and so we're trying to keep these kind of concise. So one question for you to end with this broadcast, this live Facebook Live. So how long does somebody need to take the 90 essential nutrients? When can they stop?
Okay, well, ideally, you should take them for at least 6 months before you're conceived. So you, as a one-celled embryo, are getting everything. Because if you're missing one nutrient or one cell type when you're conceived, you're a one-celled human being. Before you divide into a two-celled human being, you're going to be a Down syndrome baby, or you'll have a cleft palate, or you'll have a cerebral palsy, or you'll have some horrible birth defect of some kind. So it's imperative to have these nutrients in your mother and father for at least 6 months before you're conceived, all through the pregnancy, and then from the time you're born until, I like to say, 10 years after you die, because they used to put people alive in coffins. You know, they go into a coma, they thought they were dead, they put them in a coffin, and then they realize they hear this banging from the grave, and people are still alive. So they would put food in there, and just in case they would wake up and they need the strength to bang and get out of the coffin. So this is something you need every day. You need to avoid the bad stuff, which interferes with absorption. You need to salt your food. Of course, we have the pink Himalayan salt, and we have the pink Himalayan salt with the pepper and spices in it also in our savor division. And you require stomach acid. Stomach acid is one of your best friends. It helps you digest proteins down to amino acids, which you can use and absorb and so forth. You can't absorb big proteins. It must be broken down. This is what your stomach acid does. You also need stomach acid to absorb vitamin B12. And people say, well, they gave me B12 tablets and I couldn't absorb them, so I have to come in every month and get a B12 shot. Your doctor is milking you like a cow, Fred, because are you taking any salt? He says, oh, I can't have any salt because of blood pressure in my family. Okay, well, when you salt your food to taste with a pink Himalayan salt, when you salt to taste and it tastes really good, triple it. Okay, and in a couple of weeks' time, you'll be able to absorb B12. Same thing with iron. Okay, nobody should be anemic in America. Okay, you salt your food to taste, you take your 90 essential nutrients. And again, the stem cells in your bone marrow make red blood cells. next to your heart, the most important part of your cardiovascular system is your bone marrow. It makes red blood cells. It makes platelets. They don't bleed to death. It makes white blood cells for your immune system and to address attacking all the bad guys, the viruses and bacteria and so forth. And of course, it makes stem cells for connective tissue, things like cartilage and ligaments and tendons, connective tissue, bone matrix, which is sort of the rebar of the bone, all come from stem cells from your bone marrow. And so anything that interferes with that, and I don't want to spend, I could spend hours talking about it, but gluten is your worst enemy. And I did tracking and I found out just a couple of days ago, gluten was discovered as a cause of celiac disease 8,000 years ago, 6,000 BC. It was discovered by a Greek physician and recognized that this was causing so much problem in people with belly problems and skin problems and asthma and all that kind of stuff. And then it was connected with the most common side effect of celiac disease, in 250 BC by a Roman physician.
So is all this in your next book?
Oh yeah. Okay.
When is the next book due out?
In a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah,
okay,
a couple of weeks. Yeah, it's supposed to be out in a couple of weeks, and of course, the most common side effect of chronic celiac disease, which is what you get, your bone marrow dies when you don't get enough nutrition because you can't absorb nutrients because of the gluten in wheat, barley, rye, and oats. The most common side effect is osteoporosis, which kills your bone marrow, which is your worst enemy right now because you want your white blood cells.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up for today, and maybe we'll do another one of these. And just a quick comment from me, you know, as people across the country and even the world are following the stay-at-home orders, make sure you have all the basics stocked up, water and food and so forth. But I'll tell you, my comfort food is RB The Change coffee. It's certified organic, rainforest certified. It's even bird friendly. And so it's the cleanest, purest coffee, and it's rainforest coffee. So from Nicaragua. So talk about, you know, the nutritional density of volcanic soil from Nicaragua. Yes, absolutely. And the proceeds, the profits, when sold through Youngevity distributors, goes back to Be The Change Foundation to do a world of good through these authorized and certified charities. So that's my comfort food. And so I just want to, again, reiterate, everybody be safe, be well. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Dad and Dr. Wallach for being on you know, this with everybody today. So again, stay well. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Thank you, son. Thank you, CEO.